back from holiday and keen to get stuck into this project. So day one, today we're going to start stripping out the interior and we'll give you a few tips. So a little bit of background on this 1951 ACC Caravan. The previous owners owned it since 1973. It's the year before I was born, so it goes back a long way. And I'll be keeping them in the loop as I do this restoration. I'm sure they'll be pretty keen to see the progress. Yeah, so let's get into it. So a quick tour of the current interior. Apparently old owners had hopes of restoring this, but probably ripped it apart and decided that it was too much work. So here we go. There's not a lot left, unfortunately, but there are some pretty cool little features, like some of the latches, all the window sashes and stays, etc. Here we have it. We start off talking about some toolings, apart from the normal suspects, hammers, crowbars. Do have a soft mallet, right? This saves damaging any furniture that you may want to potentially use. Multi-grips, perfect for pulling out nails and screws, etc. that are really stuck. One thing that's super handy in particular is an impact driver. So the beauty with these is that as you're pushing down, you can hammer the top of the unit and it will undo the screws. So that old school saying, lefty loosey, righty tighty, and then you're not struggling and breaking your wrists. Standard screwdrivers. Quick tip, don't throw away all the special bits and pieces, latches, handles, light fittings, things like that. Keep those to the end. They can be super hard to find, and if you do find them, very expensive. Generally these little screws will clot up and the screws are filled with paint. So come and take the edge of the screwdriver, tap it out both ways, and then you'll actually be able to fit the screwdriver in the slot properly. If you try to do it with the paint in there, forget it, it doesn't happen. Handy hint, as I'm going I like to sweep up and rake the shovel across the floor. It makes it pretty obvious if any nails are sticking up. They're the ones that try to destroy your feet. Also, all these little suckers sticking out of the wall, I like to take those off as I'm going because they are arm and shoulder destroyers. couple of hours deep and we're about 3/4 of the way through, so it's progressing pretty well. Another little tip, as you're pulling the parts off, do keep them, especially curved bits that come from the bottom or the roof. It's going to save you a lot of time later on when you come to put them back in, so you're not having to remake templates, because they can be a bit of a mission. Okay, now that all the lining's off, I'll show you some of the parts to really watch out for. Typically that's all the top corners. If the top corners have been leaking, they'll leak right down the edge, right into the bottom corner, and it rots the whole lot out. To my surprise, this one is extremely good. There's only one tiny problem area. I'll show you. So no water leaking in the rear corners, which is great. No water in down the edge. Last corner's good. What we can see though is a little bit of light. So the side light's missing, it has been leaking, and it's now rotten in behind here. So I'll probably attack that from the outside. So looking pretty good. Might have to do something about the additional ventilation. We'll tackle that when we get the body off the chassis. Right, inside stripped. I now want to focus on getting the body off the chassis. So in order to do that, we need to pry away all the bottom edges of the aluminium sheet, front, back, both sides. So let's do a little bit of Caravan shuffling to be able to make that happen. First thing we need to do is take all the trim off. We'll be super careful about that to try not to damage it. And then normally all the panel work underneath is held on by these wooden boards. Obviously a chunk of those are rotted away, so at this stage they'll make my life a little bit easier. The other thing we'll need to do is take out all these tacks along the front and bottom edge. You need to be particularly careful about that so you don't tear the aluminium while you're doing it. Right, let's get into it. Screws are out. The next tricky little suckers can be these tiny wee nails. So to combat that, I have this modified screwdriver. It makes it pretty easy. You can just tap it under the nail head and then pry it out and pop it out with the pliers. Whilst I was unstitching that back panel and all the bits were falling down, I found this very cool coin. New Zealand sixpence, 1952, a year after the Caravan was made. So I'll incorporate that into the Caravan somewhere. That'd be awesome. Okay, so people sometimes wonder where the water comes from or where the damage comes from when these old wooden caravans leak. And back in the day, all they had was basically a similar compound to what you put around your windows, like a putty. And then they used to use generally steel nails. These ones happen to be galvanized, which is quite rare. And then the little steel nails, they rust out, and then there's a tiny wee hole, and the putty cracks, the water gets in, and it slowly leaks, generally from the top all the way down the frame, and it rots out the inside of the frame. So whilst you might not be able to find the leak, that's where it's coming from, these tiny wee pinholes. So eventually what I'll do when I've done the chassis is we'll remove all of these flashings and clean it all up and replace that with silicone. Day 2 of the Caravan pull apart. Everything's coming together pretty well. Probably a little too well, it's quite concerning. But the more I work on this, the more I'm liking it. Everything's put together with screws, which makes things super easy. Normally all the flashings are held together with nails, and half of those are rusted out, so they can be a bit of a nightmare to get apart. So to date it hasn't been too bad, but we'll take a quick look around. Everything's prying open. So I've got most of the edges apart now. Right, so they're all making way to be able to jack the body off the chassis. So we'll have to raise the body by about probably 150-200 millimeters to get it free. So now to attack the front edge on the floor, get that apart, that's our final bit. As I've been pulling this apart, the structure's starting to get a little bit weaker. Some of the wood at the front is all rotten, so you can see now that there's a big hump in the front of the floor. Getting a bit concerned about that. I don't want to snap the frame in half, so I'm going to jack the body up, keep that straight whilst take the rest of the bits off. If you get a screw like the one I've got now, and the wood underneath is rotten, which is pretty typical for this type of rebuild, pop a little screwdriver under the edge and use it as a little lever while you screw it out, and then you'll be able to grab it and get it out. Otherwise it'll just go round and round in circles going nowhere. Tap the screwdriver under there and pull it as you go in. Oh, half a screw. Okay, trying to be nice getting the screws out isn't really working, so it's time for a bit more brute force. Get underneath and split the piece of wood off. As you can see, we've got a bit of bore this in the subframe, causes some rot around where that missing part of the floor was, so we'll be checking very carefully to make sure there's no more or remove any that is there. So I think I've got all the screws out. The hubs are released of all the nails. Hopefully that's a lot, but we'll soon find out. Time for the final scrape down and clean up, and then we'll brace the inside to get ready to jack it off the chassis. Okay, now that the prep work's done, we're going to set up and brace. Right, so on the floor, got a whole bunch of timber. No need to get carried away and go buy any. This is all just pallet timber, so you might as well use what's at your disposal. We'll be putting 2 horizontal braces across the wall. That's to stop the caravan ripping apart lengthways, and then we'll put 2 braces across the width. And we'll be using those to not only jack the caravan, but also stop the caravan pulling apart sideways. Well, you know when you're getting to the thick end of it, when you're having to get out of your caravan the Dukes of Hazzard style, but we'll carry on. Day 3, right, we've got 1 wheel arch left to go. 1 is out, so we're right towards the finish end. I'll show you a couple of things about the bracing that I've done, just to make it a bit more obvious why I've done it that way. We've got 2 horizontal braces down the length of the caravan, obviously to stop it being pulled apart down the length, and then we've got 1 brace across. But the not obvious part is that the brace here, or the intersection point, is the strongest point of the caravan. There's a vertical that goes right up through into the roof. So from the floor to the roof, you'll have maximum strength. The other thing is, we've got 2 screws here, we've got 2 screws here, and we'll be jacking from under here. So that means we'll be jacking from a very, very strong point, and then that'll allow us to be issue free. The other thing that it also does is we'll have some vertical jacks, which will also be screwed, and they can be screwed in from the face, and then when we're ready for liftoff, we'll also screw it from the back. So that means that it's double braced again. So the tools from today's video will be in the description page if you're trying to find them. I'll also show you some of the screws that I've used for the bracing, and if you like it, share it, and next video will be liftoff.